And you really mentioned it here. Ad nauseum, unfortunately, a deck with a card like Laboratory Maniac in the main. You'd think, hey, if I'm going to get milled out, that seems like a great card to have. But
the trick is drawing the Maniac.
And Bruce's list, it is all over as far as which spells he wants to mill his opponent with. A lot of 2s and 1s. He's going to keep Zach guessing for most of this game.
Yeah, 4 Hedron crabs, though. That's exactly where you want to start with these mill strategies. So that's exactly what Bruce is going to be looking for in an opener here.
Right. 4 Hedron crab. And then I think for spells, he has 19 mill spells, and it looks like 13 different cards. So we'll kind of play-by-play it as you go along. There's a lot of different ways to mill. I mean, most of them are just, I guess, the burn spells of mill. Cards like Glimpse the Unthinkable, Mind Sculpt.
Dream Twist being a veritable bump in the night.
Yeah. But the first play will be for Elsik and Ad nauseum. It is a Dark Slick Shores and a Sleight of Hand.
All right, so yeah, this is exactly how the early turns for Ad nauseum usually look. Starting turn 1, maybe with a cantrip, hoping to have a turn 2 Pentad Prism, and to start setting up, try to combo on turn 3 or turn 4 for this deck.
Basic Island from Ulrich. You saw him picking up one of his 2 copies of Sphinx's Tutelage in his opening hand. And looks like he may go straight to work with a Dream Twist here. Well, flipped one out of his hand. It maybe has gone now for... He's played a creature instead.
Yeah, we'll get confirmation. This could be a Jace's Phantasm.
So Sleight of Hand for Elsik. He plays another Dark Slick Shores.
And the strength of the Ad nauseum deck is not necessarily to get onto the board very quickly. These early turns, you can play a couple cantrips. You prefer to have a Lotus Bloom on Suspend on turn 1, but they can just as easily go off in turn 4 or 5 very consistently by stringing these cantrips.
So it's not the Hedron Crab, it's its aquatic brother here, a Kraken Hatchling. Bigger on defense as it's a 0-4, but in this matchup, I would think this is a dud. Zach's not attacking.
I imagine that this card is in the deck largely as a concession to cards like Goblin Guide, Wild Nicodle. Zach Elsik is not trying to win with an attack for Laboratory Maniac.
Right, so there appear to be 2 copies of Kraken Hatchling here. And now will be the Dream Twist. So, Sleight of Hand, Simian Spirit Guide, Phyrexian Unlife are the 3 cards milled. Now, you mentioned there are 2 cards in Zach's deck that he can win the game with. When they're both gone, that's a concession?
Right, and there's also a few other backdoor ways that take milling a lot more cards, but there's 4 Angel's Grace and 4 Phyrexian Unlife. If those are all gone, then Zach can only win the game with Laboratory Maniac. No longer really can win with the Lightning Storm combo.
All right, well, he has combo piece 1 in play. This is a copy of Phyrexian Unlife. So this is one of the weirder cards in Modern, if you haven't seen this Ad nauseum deck. So we'll walk through what it does. He doesn't lose the game for having 0 life or less. And once he gets to 0, all damage is dealt to him as though he had Infect. So the result here is, I guess against damage-based strategies, it acts as a big life gain spell. What he'll actually do is with this in play, he can use the card Ad nauseum to draw his entire deck and not lose on 1 turn.
And the Lotus Blue on Suspend here makes it very likely that Zach will be able to win 3 turns from now. They'll give him the requisite mana to go for the Ad nauseum and then cast the Lightning Storm. Of course, you just need to get to 5, and then you'll draw all your Simian Spirit Guides, presuming those aren't milled, which is another factor for the cards he doesn't want to get milled actively.
Sphinx's Tutelage in play for Bruce. Will be another slow mill here. Now, if Zach has one of those payoff cards, either the Laboratory Maniac or the Lightning Storm in his hand, I don't believe Bruce actually has any discard here. I don't know if he can get it, if he can do anything about that.
Yeah, something I also looked over Bruce's list for was a bounce spell to maybe get the Unlife off the table in response to an Ad nauseum. I didn't see anything for that kind of effect, so it looks like it's just a race for Zach to cast an Ad nauseum before Bruce has milled Zach's win conditions.
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways to build a mill deck. Sometimes they have control elements while they mill you. It does look like for Bruce here, he is the burn deck of mill. It's all just straight mill.
Sometimes you might see like sanity grinding and some cryptic commands, but that's not what we're looking at here.
A draw here from Bruce on his 4th turn. Looks like there was no trigger on the Sphinx's Tutelage.
Okay, that's going to be a missed opportunity here.
It's going to be Tome Scour. That's 5 cards off the top for Zach. Angel's Grace among them. Pact of Negation, Pentad Prism, Gemstone Mine, Serum Visions.
Okay, nothing that Zach needed. Also, another thing that Zach is paying attention to is how many lands he milled. He needs to maintain enough lands to Lightning Storm Bruce for lethal.
If that's the if that's the route he wants. Couldn't well wait. If he can ad nauseum, is it not possible? One of the things he can do is he could draw his deck, play Laboratory Maniac, and then maybe cast a Serum Visions.
Yes, that is also possible.
I guess you need more than 5 mana to do that.
Right. Though assuming that there's still we haven't seen all of the Simian Spirit Guides out yet, so there'll still be some ability to generate mana after casting the ad nauseum.
Bruce Dream Twisted Zach. He flashed back the spell to his graveyard for 3 more cards. Looks like a call here for Sphinx's tutelage, saying, hey, do I get that one? I'd miss it for my turn. Judge is ruling that no, you do have to announce that when you draw your card.
Yep, if it's remembered later, your opponent gets to choose, do you want this ability to go on the stack or not? And Zach says, no, thank you.
It's going to be ad nauseum from Zach's hand. Now here's the combo on Zach's side. So he will reveal cards as many times as he wants off the top of his deck. He'll lose life equal to converted mana cost of each card he reveals. Now thanks to that Phyrexian Unlife in play, this isn't really a cost. He can reveal all of them.
And since Zach, he still has the Lotus Plume on Suspend, he doesn't have access to that mana this turn, but he also notices that Bruce only has a Swamp untapped. Is that just black mana? Nothing that will be able to mill him off of Simian Spirit Guide, Simian Spirit Guide, Simian Spirit Guide, Lightning Storm on this turn.
Well, it depends how many Spirit Guides were milled already. If 2 Spirit Guides are already in the graveyard...
Well, there's 2 in his hand.
There's 2 in his hand, and he just drew a third. Okay, so it looks like that's not going to be a concern. So he's going to draw his whole deck, which he did. Now he says, I'll exile 3 Simian Spirit Guides. Now I'll look for that one of. Here's this copy of Lightning Storm. This is the one of. This is how this deck wins.
If you didn't draft a lot of Cold Snap, you might not know this one.
Right. It gives him until end of turn. He has the ability of the card Seismic Assault. He may discard lands to deal 2 damage.
There's some interplay with Lightning Storm where your opponent can also discard lands and try to aim it back at you, but of course Zach just drew his entire deck. He has more than enough lands to do that right back.
Yeah, I mean, it shows I have 10 lands. I'm going to discard them. That's enough damage. And game 1 goes over to Zach Elsik and ad nauseum.
Yeah, just a natural turn 5, 5th land, cast ad nauseum. The Lotus Bloom wasn't on time to be a factor there, and Bruce kind of missed all the relevant cards that he wanted to mill.
All right, we're going to look at some sideboards, though. And I'm interested, I want to start with Zach Elsik's deck. He got game 1 there, which he should be very happy with, but I think he should be concerned, first of all.
I completely agree.
You know, he said, hey, those mills could have gone the wrong way. Now there's a big win for him in the sideboard, and it's a card that if you played against, I'll play as a combo player who plays against ad nauseum. I don't always know what an ad nauseum sideboard deck looks like, but I know it starts with 4 copies of Leyline of Sanctity.
Yeah, this one probably comes in more often against Burn, but anytime you have a mill opponent, I'm sure that one's going right in.
Yeah.
You could potentially also bring in Beside You. I don't know how worried Zach is about counter spells, but his opponent does have a lot of blue lands, so that one is a factor that would potentially come in as well. Mostly we're looking at Leyline of Sanctity, though. Yeah,
like, what do you think about something like Thoughtseize? Do you have any interest in Thoughtseizing a mill player?
I think that Thoughtseize, we already want to bring in 4 cards with Leyline of Sanctity, and this is a very tight list. I don't know if there's enough room for Thoughtseize necessarily. It wouldn't be a huge surprise to see Zach cast one in a sideboard game, but it's not something that I have an expressed interest in bringing in.
Yeah, it's one of those decks where you maybe only get to board in 4 cards in any matchup, and in this case, I mean, Leyline's got to be 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Right, Leyline's just a windmill slam, and once it's in play, there's really no need for a Thoughtseize. So it's
I could see that.
Yeah, it's redundant in a point where if you have the Leyline, the Thoughtseize actually just does not matter.
So, all right, so Zach it's not that he can get more win conditions, he can just better defend the 2 he has.
Right.
Interesting. We'll get to Bruce's in a second, but we're going to take a second to tell you about StarCityGames.com Game Night. This is the promotion hosted by StarCityGames.com, but it's all over the country at stores near you. So what this is it's an exclusive chance to win pins and tokens every month just for playing the Magic events that you'd normally play. So for the month of June, and you'll notice as we have this wonderful aquatic creature here on our suits, this is the otter from the card Otter Spell. It's part of our creature kind of parody collection here. So you get that on tokens and pins for winning anything this month. Next month, the card we'll be giving away is the Snipcaster Mage. This is you know, your favorite card. I mean, it's modern, so it's only fitting that we're going to talk about this one. He's the 2/1 Crab Wizard. And have you seen the one from August yet?
I don't know if I've seen this one.
All right, so if you register right now, say your store wants to get in on this promotion, we can get you signed up in time for August, and you can win at your store the Young Burrowmancer. I thought you might like this one. Yeah, he would go in a Delver deck, right?
Yeah, I might need to pick up some of these for my cube. I've been working on designing a Grixis cube.
I bet there's a Young Burrowmancer in your cube.
There is a Young Pyromancer. Maybe get some Burrow tokens to generate with that one.
I'm a big fan of this one. I'm going to have to pick up some of these, too. Maybe go play a couple game nights.
I love that smug little smile. He knows he's cool.
All right. You can find out where to play game nights and get registered at starcitygames.com/game night. So going to the sideboard then for Bruce Ulrich, the mill player. He's got a bunch of different tools.
Yeah, primarily what he's been looking for is counter magic here. We have the negate here. That one is for sure the best card coming in out of the sideboard. Interesting enough, invasive surgery is not a particularly great counterspell in this matchup.
Yeah, though I want to say of the cards from Shadows over Innistrad, I think this is invasive surgery is one of the big players in Modern. It's a card I'm not surprised to see in a deck list.
Against most combo decks, there's a lot of sorceries you want to be countering. Scape Shift is the first one that immediately comes to mind.
I'm terrified when I play that deck that someone's going to invasive surgery my Scape Shift. Especially if I'm the blue version of Scape Shift, I may not be able to win anymore.
Right, exactly. For Ad Nauseam, though, they're looking at an instant in Ad Nauseam, a sorcery in Phyrexian on Life, and a spell you couldn't interact with if you wanted to in Angel's Grace.
Right.
You could counter something like a Serum Visions, but that's really not the impact you want from your sideboard card.
He does have some Ghost Quarter in his sideboard. Now, the Ad Nauseam deck actually does play 2 basics. It's 1 island, 1 plains, so not much action there.
Yeah, just enough to get around Ghost Quarter.
One thing I do like, and now this is interesting, because you'd normally play it against a combo deck. He has some copy of Wrench Mind in his sideboard. This is the 2-mana discard spell. It's they discard 2 cards for 2 mana unless they discard an artifact. Now, normally I really like discard against combo decks. Ad Nauseam, this is a more interesting one, because sometimes they actually just have extra cards.
They have extra cards. It's kind of a 2-card combo. You don't really need a lot of the cards in your hand. And you also just have Lotus Bloom and Pentad Prism, which could just be in Zach's hand that he doesn't need.
So Bruce starts the game on a Dismal Backwater, goes to 21. That's the life gain cycle of dual lands from Khans of Tarkir block. Zach will start no Leyline, so that's good for Bruce, but bad news is he does have a Lotus Bloom.
The other bad news is Zach already has Lightning Storm and Angel's Grace in his hand.
So this mill, you can't mill him off the win cons.
Right.
Here's Tome Scour for 5 cards. It hits a set of lands and a Serum Visions.
Yeah, so unlike game 1, this time for sure Bruce is trying to get the entire deck, and he's racing a Lotus Bloom with 2 counters on it.
Right, and so he'll have to rely on something like maybe that sideboarded negate to catch the Lightning Storm.
Absolutely.
And Bruce, it looks like, missed land 2 on turn 2. Now he's hit it on the 3rd turn. But what you'd have to worry about out of basically any deck that's going to play Lotus Bloom against you is when you see Lotus Bloom on turn 1, I would assume when it comes off suspend
that you're dead.
That I'm dead. Yeah.
Exactly. So it would be very surprising to see Bruce use his mana at sorcery speed on that turn.
Mind Sculpt is the play from Ulrich. That's 7 cards off the top. He's doing the right things, but I think between missing a land drop, having Dismal Backwater to play tapped, it's too slow.
Yeah, I find it very unlikely that Bruce will be able to mill enough cards. You know, there still is the potential that if Zach's lands are all clumped together in a way that Bruce can mill him off so many lands that Zach can't make a lethal Lightning Storm, and he hits the Laboratory Maniac, we could have a game here. But that's basically the exact out that we're looking at here. Bruce just does not have enough mana to mill enough cards efficiently enough to put Zach out of this game without some good variance on his end.
You see on Zach's side, his turn 3 is a Temple of Enlightenment. He'll keep the Scry on top. One thing about the Ad Nauseam deck is they frequently play suspend a turn 1 Lotus Bloom, then do nothing, and then win.
Yeah, they either do nothing, continue to do nothing, and lose, or do nothing, and then one turn happens when suddenly the opponent is just dead. Angel's Grace, Ad Nauseam, Unlife, Ad Nauseam, a lot of different ways to just win the game out of nowhere. And here's Bruce is tapping out for Thing in the Ice.
Okay. So if he had this down earlier, well, no, that's just... This is interesting because it's a threat. He can turn this into a 7/8, I think, fairly easily. Now, there's no creatures to bounce in Zach's deck.
Right, on this turn, I think that Bruce's best chance of winning this game was milling that critical mass of lands, maybe finding the Laboratory Maniac as well. With that Bloom coming off suspend, I believe that this game will be ending this turn.
Yeah, that's usually the plan. I mean, you're wondering whether did Bruce have maybe another Mind Sculpt in hand or something like that?
Right.
He would want to play it. All right, now it's Leyline of Sanctity from Zach. He'll exile Simian Spirit Guide and just tap his lands to do this one. Maybe he doesn't have the win just yet, but Leyline should buy him a whole lot of time.
Yeah, he's still off ad nauseum, I imagine, is what's happening here.
Yeah, you said he was going to win the game this turn. Does that count?
Yeah,
right?
It's pretty close.
Yeah, so Bruce cannot mill Zach anymore.
Now we're back in the territory where negate could be a factor when the ad nauseum turns up.
Well, Thing in the Ice could turn into a 7/8.
Yep.
But what's interesting, and I want to point this out, is that if almost all of Bruce's cards are mill spells. And if he wants to get those counters off Thing in the Ice, you have to actually still cast them. He would have to mill himself.
Not the best proposition.
Well, I guess as long as he doesn't mill all of his own cards, it's fine.
Yeah, he has a couple cards that don't mill him too terribly much. There's a Thought Scour in hand.
Yeah, they'll go ahead and Thought Scour. So yeah, he'll Thought Scour himself.
Yeah, it only takes 3 cracks from the Awoken Horror to actually close a game out. So he just needs to cast the most efficient spells possible, target himself, try not to mill himself all the way to death. Looks like we still have 4 counters on the Thing in the Ice. Bruce seems to have missed the trigger to remove it.
Yeah, he's going for it now. All right, so the issue here is that after Bruce milled himself, before he's went for this counter, he put that island into play. If he hadn't done that yet, it would be out of order sequencing. And the judge might say, hey, try not to do that, but I'd almost certainly expect the judge ruling to go into play. Now, because he's played the island, that shows that he's progressed and doing more things. And the judge ruled that, unfortunately for Bruce, the counters will stay on 4.
Right, committing another game action. Even if it looked pretty just natural, just the land came out. It wasn't really thinking, but it's still a game action. So
right.
Unfortunately, it gets docked for that one.
Slate of hand for Zach sees 2 lands, picks 1. Zach may have to dig in his heels a bit here. He doesn't have any of the combo. Looks like he may have actually found ad nauseum. Best question is how many? He's got to count lands here. Zach plays 20 lands in his deck.
So the other thing was, if he has ad nauseum, has Angel's Grace, but he doesn't have 6 mana currently, so he has to be able to cast the Angel's Grace before the ad nauseum. So this turn, I assume we'll see him go for it.
Bruce's turn was a copy of Sands of Delirium. This is the rare from Corset. Gives him the ability to pay mana to mill the same number of cards, but with Leyline of Sanctity in play, it's not going to do anything.
Right.
Zach's going to go ahead and cast Phyrexian Unlife, suspend another Lotus Bloom. Setting up for a big turn. He's feeling pretty safe behind that Leyline.
Right.
We go back over to Bruce. Draws Swamp. And you can see the wheels spinning on this blue-black deck. Him having to commit Sands of Delirium into an onboard Leyline shows that he really doesn't have any strong plays.
Right, not even another instant or sorcery to target himself to try to thaw out this Thing in the Ice, which is realistically his best avenue to victory in this game.
Now there is a copy, it looks like, of Consuming Aberration in Bruce's hand. That's a card that could actually do some good work here.
Yeah, that one attacks.
It attacks. It also, I don't believe, it mills each opponent when you cast a spell, so it actually would get around the Leyline of Sanctity.
Yeah. Let's see if he can get a 5th land online to cast that one.
Yeah, we'll see if Zach gives him the time. Lotus Bloom ticks down to 2 as Zach draws another card. Plays Seachrome Coast. You see that because it says each opponent and doesn't say target opponent, this guy will get to keep the mill going. A lot of ifs, though. He's got to get it in play, cast some spells.
So I'm pretty sure that Zach has the ability to combo off already. I don't know if he's respecting the possibility of, say, a disrupting shoal, or what exactly.
Yeah.
He's just playing this as conservatively as possible.
You see Zach's going to read that Consuming Aberration. Looks like Bruce playing the pre-release one. This was actually the pre-release foil for if you chose Dimir for your guild pack.
That's a heck of a card in the sealed deck.
Yeah.
There it is. Look at that promo glory.
I'll tell you, that was the one I got. I chose that at the pre-release.
Okay. Here's one that was not a pre-release promo.
Pact of Negation. All right, well, what Bruce did do is he played a card that was good enough to get that Pact out of Zach's hand. And he sees he can't pay for his Pact, but he can Angel's Grace. So he won't lose the game for not paying.
Maybe this was Zach's line. He's going for style points. He wants to get as much value out of this Angel's Grace as possible to not just not lose the game to Pact of Negation and then also win with Ad Nauseam.
Sure. That Consuming Aberration, unfortunately for Bruce, is a one-of in the deck. So, and without any sort of raised dead effects, he's not going to be able to do that again.
And we're back on Thing in the Ice.
City of Brass for Zach Elsik. Next turn, he'll get his second Lotus Bloom, so he'll have up to 11 mana in one turn. So what I would think the kill we're going for here is Ad Nauseam into Lab Maniac and cast a draw spell. If he's worried, the reason he hasn't gone for this Lightning Storm perhaps is that he doesn't have enough lands in his deck. Well, looks like we have Ad Nauseam here.
And at this point, with 2 lands on tap, he could be going for either win condition at this point. So
okay, yeah, he'll get that land drop. So here's Ad Nauseam. He'll draw his whole deck. He'll go to negative a bunch life. Remember, now he's on the poison because of the plan. So exile Simian Spirit Guide, pays 2. Here is, looks like Lightning Storm. Does he have enough lands to finish it out? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that'll do it. That'll do. Game and match for Zach Elsik.
yeah, it seems strange to me. I was starting to wonder if maybe that was a Slaughter Pact for some reason, and I was reading the Ad Nauseam wrong. It seemed kind of like Zach was playing with his food a little bit to me. The only concern I can think of is Pact of Negation, but I don't know. Zach is certainly a more versed Ad Nauseam pilot than I am.